Well, now let us see what is the normal physiology and what is abnormal in our body system that results in this overactivity of the bladder. The kidneys, typically, which are in the upper back, they produce the urine by filtering the blood, and that urine is then brought down by these two tubes called the ureters, one on each side, and they open into the bladder. And they open through these tiny little openings, and the urine then fills up into the bladder, as you can see right here. Now, when the time is right, this urethral sphincter will open up, and then the bladder will empty, for now, for example. So otherwise, the sphincter remains nicely closed, and all that is under nervous system control. Now, typically in a child, there is a reflex that goes in from the bladder as the bladder is filling up, and it says, goes to the spinal cord and says, hey, I've got to go. And the reflex comes right back and says, all right, buddy, you can go now and empty. So the child just empties in the diaper. But as we get older, then we realize, no, our brain starts taking over, and our intelligent brain called the cerebral cortex, it inhibits this reflex. So when that urge comes in and says, I've got to go, it'll say, no, you cannot go because right now you are talking and listening. You're not in the toilet, in the bathroom. So you cannot go. You got to wait. So think about the frontal lobe is like a brake. You know, your car is in San Francisco and on one of those steep roads of San Francisco, and you're there, and you basically, sitting there in your car, and it's in car is at neutral, but your leg is on the brake. That is the brain cortex. So it's constantly putting the leg on the brake. Now, if that brake takes off and the cortical inhibition stops, then the bladder will go. So in some cases, something happens and this cortical inhibition gets a little bit weaker, and that results in this reflex becoming very potent. Or in some cases, this reflex just overwhelms that cortical inhibition and there is urine leakage. And that is when the bladder just contracts. You don't want it to do it, but it just contracts and urine starts running down. That is the classic pathophysiology that happens typically, when you have this overactivity of the bladder. Now, what the next step would be is to see what is the history? How do we find out that is there any cause for this, or is it without cause? So next up, we'll look at the history and then how do we do the workup. Take care.